Now getting over the surprise of being asked, but you know, what's more logical than to bring in front of a group of impressionable young lawyers some guy who went into the theater? All right. So visit any gift shop attached to any Shakespeare theater anywhere in the English-speaking world, and I can practically guarantee that you will find a t-shirt or a mug or a keychain which is emblazoned with the best-selling single quotation that came out of Shakespeare. And I don't mean to be or not to be, or even, you know, parting is such sweet sorrow. No, the Shakespeare quote that always has the merchandise flying off of the shelves is the one from the second part of Henry VI, which is, of course, the first thing we do: let's kill all the lawyers. Thought I'd let you know that now before you go any further down the road. But you know, seriously, it is fantastic to be in front of a new generation of lawyers. If only because it's the Shakespeare-loving lawyers who are buying all that merchandise that's out there. You know, artists know that it's commercially advantageous to make fun of your audience, to send them up. And nobody laughs louder, for instance, nobody laughs louder than English audiences in Hamlet when the gravedigger says that the mad Danish prince has been sent off to England because, of course, his madness won't be noticed there. I suppose it's a bit like Sarah Palin, you know, appearing in front of being made fun of by celebrity satirists, after all, can be a bit of a perverse ego boost, you know. It means that you're not so important that you can't be made fun of. And anyway, and when you're made fun of by Shakespeare, that's really good. Huh? That's the major leagues. Well, certainly there were a lot of lawyers in Shakespeare's theatre, and all the plays that were taking place at that time. A very strong amount of the audience, some estimate as much as 35% of the audience, were composed of lawyers. And we know that at least two of his plays, The Comedy of Errors and Twelfth Night, were actually performed in... That's a very young graduate. It's good you're keeping the standards high. But we know that Twelfth Night Comedy of Errors were actually performed in the Inns of Court during his lifetime. And in fact, there are people who tell you that Shakespeare himself was a lawyer, or at least trained as one. Now, there are other people who tell you he was an Irish Catholic or an Italian woman. There was a period of time in Shakespeare's life which is quite mysterious. It happened between 1585, when his twins were christened at Stratford upon Avon, and in 1592, when he suddenly started to appear in the theatrical scene in London, during which we really know very little about what was going on with him. And there are all kinds of theories. You know, it's been suggested that Shakespeare spent those years as a soldier, or a school teacher, or even a butcher. And because many of his plays seem to demonstrate an above-average knowledge of the law, it's been also suggested that he was the clerk for an attorney. We'll never know, of course. Or, who knows, maybe one day somebody will come up with some evidence. But whether or not Shakespeare had any actual legal training, he would have gone to school long enough to have gained a solid grounding in rhetoric, which is one of the three studies in the Trivium. Now, my teenage son tells me that the Trivium is a band, but... And Trivium, of course, was a staple of Elizabethan curriculum. And one of the things that made him so brilliant as a playwright was his ability to show us how double-edged a tool language can be, how it can be used to manipulate even the smartest people. You'll notice that whenever a Shakespearean villain lies, they usually do it by telling some kind of truth. They use language to twist facts, they use it to suggest other possibilities, rather than telling an outright, bold-faced lie. Now, if I say that this makes Shakespeare your kind of playwright, please do not take it the wrong way. I mean that as lawyers, you need to be particularly aware of the ways in which language can be used and abused, its potential for ambiguity, and its openness to interpretation. In your profession, you need to be able to use language unambiguously. You need to be able to argue persuasively and to detect loopholes in the arguments of others. And you need to cultivate clarity of thought. So it's well worth your while to spend some time with a master who can show you all the ways in which words can prove too slippery to trust. In everything from Iago's manipulation of Othello, to Portia's outwitting of Shylock, which we reenacted some time ago. From Shakespeare, you can learn a lot that can prove useful in your careers. So why am I talking about further learning on a day which should really be the culmination of your learning, of your studies? Well, I'm here to state the obvious, which is that learning never ends. We learn constantly until we take our last breath. And perhaps more importantly than that, to make the statement that someone once said that the only time that we are really happy is when we are learning. Now, you might not have agreed with that statement at every point in your educational career, but I think there's something to it. Because learning isn't acquired only by work. Learning can also come to us through play. And as a child, you play games for pleasure, but in doing so, you learn skills that you will need as an adult. You form ideas of fairness. You learn how to work together with other children in a team, even if you're role-playing in a fantasy situation, and how to rely on your own wits. You learn how to win, or at least how to try to win. You learn how to behave when you do, and perhaps more importantly, you learn how to behave when you don't win, when you lose. You might suppose this kind of learning ceases once you grow up, and you put childish things away. And perhaps for some people it does, but I don't think it should, because the challenges that we face in life don't stop coming just because we're adults. And as I guess we're all learning, they probably come in much more furiously and in thicker numbers as we get older. So we need more than ever to learn through play. And the various forms of play available to us, of all of them, one of the richest and most rewarding, not to also mention one of the ways that's completely legal, is engagement with the arts. I see the arts, and theater in particular, as a kind of jungle gym for our emotions and for our thoughts. Theater is a grown-up form of game playing. We use it to play games of let's pretend, about love and hate, about sorrow and joy, about life and death. And those games, those plays, help us deal with all those things when we encounter them in real life. They help us understand that we aren't alone, that human beings all through history have wrestled with the same kinds of emotions that affect us today. And they give us words that can console us and inspire us. I say this as a theater artist myself, whose parents never quite forgave me for not going to law school. So I have to declare a vested interest. But nevertheless, I do believe that everyone in the world, whether you're a lawyer, a soldier, a school teacher, or even a butcher, has a potential to benefit from the kind of learning offered through the arts. And that learning is of public as well as private significance. It's critically important in a free society that ideas about human nature, about government and justice, about good and evil be constantly articulated, scrutinized, and critiqued. And we do this in many ways, in our legislative assemblies, we do it in our law courts, in media, and we do it in our theaters. We're drawn to art because it gives us pleasure. That was a good story. Boy, that's a beautiful picture. But we return to certain works of art over and over again because they fascinate us in ways that we never fully understand. Full of meaning and of mystery, they embody the kinds of huge ideas and acute observations that not only reflect a society, but can help shape it. And these are the works that we call the classics. The plays of Shakespeare, of Aeschylus, of Sophocles, the most enduring works from the whole history of drama. Plays like these invite us to look through the superficial trappings of time and place and see which parts of the human experience are enduringly true and which parts are merely incidental. They are a kind of lens through which any society in any era can see the questions that preoccupy it thrown into an extremely sharp focus. A play like The Tempest, for instance, which, as it so happens, we're doing this season in Stratford with Christopher Plummer's Prospero in June 25th. Sorry. Is on one level a story about revenge and forgiveness, and love and loss and the injustices of one generation finding resolution in the next. And these things touch us deeply and on a very personal level. But this play is also a profound philosophical discussion of ideas. Ideas about how we govern ourselves, about what constitutes a just society, about colonialism and its effect on indigenous people, about art and the creation of art, and also about the role of language in our lives and in our society. Its principal character, Prospero, is a deposed duke who has himself become a usurper, an imperialist who has enslaved the island's original inhabitants, the spirit Ariel and the half-human Caliban. Faced with a problem of nation building, he's taught Caliban language. Language, of course, is what lends structure to thought, and it's a necessary foundation for political and legal institutions. But Caliban, who seems to have managed all right his own way before Prospero showed up, doesn't use his newly acquired language for any particular lofty ends. Instead, he uses it primarily to curse his master. And indeed, he has some reason to do so. So one of the many questions the play raises is, how do you structure a society when starting with nothing? And how do you keep from messing up what's already working on some basic level? The questions would have real implications for an England, remember, that was just embarking on its grand colonial adventure. It still has implications for the West today, as we attempt to impose or transfer our values on states that are unaccustomed to them. But I'm not here today to sell you on our production of A Tempest. At least not entirely. Did I mention Christopher Plummer? My real role is the one that I mentioned from the outset, the traditional role in these occasions, to offer you some sage advice as you venture out of the utopian academic world onto the rough seas of working life. So my message to you as you embark on this phase of your lives, as Wordsworth described as a period of getting and spending, is quite simple. Make some room in your busy schedules for the questing child inside of you, for the child who longs to play, and through play, to learn. You've learned how to be lawyers, a profession that is fundamental to the health of a civil society. There can be no civilization without justice. Without the law, Sir Thomas More says in A Man for All Seasons, there would be nothing that stands between us and chaos. But as you go on to fulfill this vital role in our society, I hope that all of you will make time to go to plays, to visit art galleries, to attend concerts, to read books. For it's in doing so that you will feel the life force within you unfolding like a flower towards the sun. And in doing so, that you will learn to make the most out of being human. To all of you, I wish you well in your careers and in your voyages throughout your life. To borrow the words of Prospero in The Tempest, may you enjoy calm seas and auspicious gales and sails so expeditious to cast your royal fleet far off. Then to the elements, be free, and fare thou well.